The one thing I would advise is a strong CV. Have a strong CV which is concise, maybe a page and a half. You don't need to do your last 25 years of experience. You don't want to let people down. I didn't want to let my colleagues down. I didn't want to let my employees down because we had to pay them. I didn't want to let clients or candidates, and it pushed me on. If you do work with a recruiter, choose somebody who really knows the market, because
Hello and welcome to The Effective Advisor, a podcast from Change Squared. I'm Ben Wright. I'm joined this week by James Walker, founder and managing director of BWD, a recruitment firm specifically focused in the financial services market. Hi James, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi Ben, good to see you.
Thank you for coming on the show. I think you have some really good insights that our listeners will be keen to grab hold of in the current marketplace.
Fingers crossed. I'll do my best.
So for those who haven't heard of BWD, just give us a flavour of the company and what you guys do.
So BWD is a recruitment firm, and we specialise purely within financial services. So I guess the best way to describe it is if you look at, for example, financial services as an umbrella, we've got 4 divisions running in the business, and I'll try and name them and remember them. So we've got wealth management, and that is a cornerstone of the business because that looks after financial advisors, financial planners, etc. We've then got regulatory risk and compliance, which we've branched into. And then we have a further team, which is investments, pensions and actuarial. So mainly focused on the actuarial market, which is very interesting and very buoyant. And then we also do sales and distribution. So in terms of old money language, that would be the broker consultant market. So wealth management and the sales and distribution is how we started the business. They were our focus. And then we branched out into other areas. And we've recently launched a management or a mergers and acquisitions division as well, which is helping advisors looking to sell. So we do that from Leeds, but we're a national business, and we're also now working in the US of A as well, which is an interesting market.
Wow, that is an expansion. When did you start in the US?
We started this year, so it was part of the sort of growth plan that we had. Our clients, some of the larger clients that we have, they have offices in the UK as well as the US, so it was a natural extension for us to do. And it's a vast market. Interestingly, there are more recruiters in the UK than there are in the US, and it's 5 or 6 times bigger. So less competition in the US than there is in the UK, and it's a very wide market. But they treat recruiters as a professional partner. It's a different type of relationship we have with them.
Oh wow, that sounds like a great opportunity then.
It is, yeah. I think it's as I say, it's part of the growth plan, and it's just nice to branch out, different culture, different people. It's that's what's recruitment's about. So yeah, it's keeping me busy. I love what I do. It's a very, very busy market at the moment. It's labour or talent short, and having a good recruiter to help you is absolutely needed at the moment.
Yeah, I think from what I see in the marketplace anyway, there is a distinct shortage of skilled people across all of financial services really, and possibly wider than that. But most firms are looking for staff and are worried about losing staff. And I'd like to try and touch on today, as part of our kind of conversation, how firms can position themselves in the best light to attract and retain staff, and how people can actually do position themselves in the best light to get the job. But we'll come on to that shortly. So BWD's been going for 16 years?
16 years. We started, the three of us, in 2006. I'll tell you a story if you want.
Yes.
How we set up, because it's I think it should be of interest, because there were mistakes made. So I fell into recruitment in 2002. I was a pensions administrator. I started in 1995. I was working for what was then called Friends Provident. And then I sort of moved up the ranks and became a team manager, managing the stakeholder teams. And then I moved to Aon, and I was managing one of their pension schemes. But obviously that wasn't where my calling was. And my wife introduced me to what was then a headhunter who had been headhunting her, and she mentioned that her husband was looking. So that headhunter then phoned me, and then that's how I fell into recruitment. And I think it was just perfect for me because I got to, use some sales skills and persuasive skills, but also using my knowledge of financial services. So that's where I fell into it, worked in financial services. That's how I started. And then probably about 3 or 4 years later, we started BWD. So that was, Alistair, Gareth and myself.
What was the catalyst to go from being a recruiter for somebody else to say, actually, I'm going to start my own company?
Well, we were working for a company, and unfortunately, a lot of recruitment firms, or a lot of businesses in general, they're not run that well. So we were there for about 18 months, and that firm went into liquidation. Okay, so we took that as an opportunity to effectively go and work for a network. So we were self-employed. So we were working for a network, and obviously they gave you a higher percentage of your billings, which was great. But we found, or I particularly found, that I wanted to, we were building someone else's brand, and I wanted to build our brand because we were taking on people in terms of employees. So we actually decided to leave that network and set up our own company. That was the plan. So the 3 of us plus 1, maybe 2 employees at the time. And what we thought we were doing, which was the right thing, was to explain to the managing director of the network, say, we're leaving. Well, we're just giving you the heads up, but we're leaving. That's our intention. We'd like to perhaps buy some services, admin support, etc. But we felt it was right to let them know, or let him know. In the space of 12 hours, 24 hours, he put the business into liquidation, the entire network. Because losing us meant he was losing a lot of his income stream.
Wow.
So from what I thought we were doing the right thing by just giving somebody the verbal heads up, actually cost us hundreds of thousands of pounds. Because what I didn't realise is, even though the work was mine, and obviously my colleagues, and we were doing the CVs and the interviews, the terms of business were the network with the client. So any invoices, any CVs, any interviews, etc., were literally under the auspices of the network. So when the liquidator came in, they were just there chasing the fees, etc. So it was a really tough time, because the money that we had planned, which was coming in through the fees which were due, that was to be invested in our new company. And then to be told to be locked out of the office. And remember, this is before really the internet, so everything was in files and your PC, as in locally. So we had access to nothing. And it got pretty scary. I just got married, really. I had a young child, less than a year. My wife was saying, "What are you doing?" And I was thinking, I actually don't know here. So it was a very, very tough time. And I remember the 3 of us sitting vividly in the office, our first office, and it was in Horsforth, not too far away from Tennant, actually. And there were wires hanging down. There was no furniture, no PC, nothing. And we had to make a choice. Do we either go back employed, or do we create a company that we can be proud of? Luckily, we took that one. And it was the best decision we ever made, but it was probably the scariest time that I've ever had, because you didn't know what was going on, and the emotional pressure on you. And you learn pretty quickly, just pick your battles, because it got very nasty. But it made me realise the importance of reading a contract. So anybody under a network, read your contract, because I'm living proof that what I thought I'd signed, I hadn't, and it got very, very messy. But best way to learn, I think, through those challenges. So that's how we set it up, and then we grew, etc. And we've gone from a Leeds-based regional firm to a national firm, now to international. So I've been very lucky to work with some great people, and I don't regret that decision at all.
What a story!
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just going to picture myself, or picture now, you guys sat in your office with your wires hanging out of the roof, thinking, now what?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you cope with that pressure?
Luckily, I've got a very supportive wife who basically was fully behind me. She was on maternity leave, and she just said, like, I believe that you can do this. And I think I've got some, good, strong people around me. My father-in-law, who was alive at the time, he was an IFA, and he's like, right, now you got to go for it. And I lost a lot of weight because I was worried, because you are thinking, what's going to happen in the future? I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got a child, I've got my wife. What are we going to do? But I think sometimes when life throws you those challenges, it can make you or break you. And I've got this mindset, well, do you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Solve the consequences. Let's go for it. So I perhaps didn't feel, looking back, perhaps I didn't feel the pressure as much because I was so naive, but I had worries. But luckily, if you've got good people behind you who believe in you, when you've got your down days, then you can do it. And I'm a true believer. Life will throw you some curveballs. You've got to take your licks, take your medicine, and push on. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the magic solution is, but whatever it was for those people around me, I think that worked for me.
Yeah, I think having a cheerleader is really important, and people don't really realise that. I don't think it's easy to think, well, I'm okay, I believe in me. Sometimes it's nice to have somebody else that believes in you as well and just gives you that push.
Yeah, I think it's because you don't want to let people down. I didn't want to let my colleagues down. I didn't want to let my employees down because we had to pay them. I didn't want to let clients or candidates. And it pushed me on. It pushed me on. But you learn very quickly how to run a business, how to run it badly first, and then how to improve upon it. But it was, looking back, it was fun times as well. You had to build your own website. You had to get an email address. It's like, well, how'd you do that? What I would say is getting good advice is critical in life. And I know you give advisors advice in terms of running a business. It's so valuable. Sometimes you just look at the end cost. Oh, it's going to cost me £500 or £1,000. But actually, one poor decision can cost you thousands. So really get some good people who have got your genuine interests at heart, and they will help you sort of, run your business effectively. Good legal support, a good accountant, etc. There are people out there, and they're great. So yeah, definitely get some good people around you.
Fantastic advice. And obviously it's worked for you because you're now, as you said, international.
We are, yeah. It sounds grand, doesn't it?
It does.
I always keep my feet on the ground. To me, we're still a good recruitment firm, trying to be better every single day. And I think you can have almost like the God complex. If you keep growing and building. I said, just keep it real. One of our values is humility, and I think it's rare to find a recruiter that has that humility and that being fairly humble and modest. It's not a normal character trait in a recruiter where they have the God complex. But I think keep your feet on the ground, and I think that sense of modesty runs throughout the business anyway. So I never look at it and think, great, we've achieved this. I always think, what next? What can we improve? That's not right. This needs to be fixed. So you never stop learning.
Is that your default mindset, is what's next?
It is, yeah. I'm in a very privileged position where I still work with some clients. I work on the business. I work with people to help them improve and achieve their ambitions. I get to meet people like you, Ben, and interesting people, from a client perspective, from a candidate, but also other, business leaders. So I'm a very lucky position that I'm learning from everyone, and then try and take the best bits and put it into my business, and then sort of mention it as that's my idea, even though arguably it's not. So yeah, I think my ethos is, how can I explain this? You just got to get up, get dressed, and get stuff done. And I think I've grown in the last sort of 5 years with COVID, etc., because we've had some really crazy times. But as I said at the start, it can either make you or break you, and I won't allow it to break me. It's got to keep pushing on. Don't look back, look forward.
COVID affected a lot of businesses in very different ways. Obviously, the world had to change how it operated almost. Was that a good thing or a bad thing for recruitment?
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for employers because it's opened up a new way of working. So before, you used to have opportunities where you had to be in the office. So that restricted your talent pool. But if your clients have now got that technology in place where it can widen up, it creates a wider talent pool and more opportunity for clients to grow, which is great. So I think, there will be negatives, no doubt, from COVID. But I think this hybrid working, this flexibility, etc., and this more grown-up attitude of work being output or input, etc., rather than just a place, I think on the whole, on balance, has been good for the employment sector, has been good for our clients, because it's enriched the talent pool. And if you're a business looking to grow and get the right people, having a wider talent pool is going to help you achieve your goals. So I think broadly, on reflection, I think that has been a huge positive. The other side is trying to keep that culture, because when you've got people working remotely or in different areas, it's hard to then instill that culture, especially with new people coming in, and I think people still like to meet and have that place where you can meet people in the office and have those conversations. So there are some negatives and challenges that employers are trying to grapple with. But on balance, I think it's, from a client perspective, absolutely, and candidates as well. It's more opportunity.
So do you think that it's now the default, it's expected, this flexibility? It's now a God-given right that you can be flexible working as a candidate?
I think it's, definitely. I think not only expected, but if you don't do it, then you won't be considered. I was talking to somebody she's very senior. She works at, board level in big multinational companies. And I had this conversation with her probably a while ago now, but I think if you remember the dial was very much in favour of the employer, the balance of power, put it that way. That's now shifted in the last 3 years to the employee. And she was saying perhaps it's gone too far, because it's almost like the employer has got to solve almost every social and economic problem that anyone has. So I think there needs to be a balance, because I think there needs to be an understanding from a candidate perspective that you need to be in the office and work, and you're going to have flexibility, but there are times we need to see people. But employees do expect a lot. They expect a fantastic culture, fantastic, remuneration. They want health and well-being. They want all of those benefits, etc. And I think when you're an employer and you're going through a boom market, you can make those decisions. The challenge will come now is when the markets change. Will you stick to those principles of hybrid working, where you're offering so many benefits, duvet days, etc.? Are you going to stick with that when your productivity falls, when you've got challenges in the market? Because we are seeing now that some companies are saying, right, you need to be back in the office. I think it was FNZ said recently, right, you're all coming back. And people were like up in arms. Personally, I think a balance is the right way to go, because I think if your people are productive in the office, great. If they're productive out the office, great. Don't force them to be productive if they're not, because you'll just get issues. But a balanced approach, I think, is the way forward.
I mean, I've seen some companies, as you just said there, saying everyone back in. That's it now. We're all back in the office. This kind of COVID thing's over. Let's kind of crack on with life. And I think that they will struggle to get employees in. I wonder whether there's a case for output-based measures much more than time spent. It's the quality of what's achieved by the individual rather than how long they sat at their desk for.
Yeah, because I think when I started work, it was if you were in the office, the longer you were in the office, you could accrue flexi time. So I played the system, I'm not contracted anymore, so I can say what I want. I played the system because, I used to work those inverted commas, those additional hours. But I think you need to have that grown-up conversation with people about what's expected, And in my business, I look at the output. What is the output? because some days are going to be busier than others, etc. But I think work is what you do. It's not where you are. And I think we need to be flexible with people, because I prefer to be in the office. I prefer it because if I'm at home, if there's too many distractions and whatever, and I like to have my own place. So I'm more productive in the office, but I know that. But I do think we should be managing people based on the output rather than just the time spent.
It's interesting. I'm the complete opposite to you. So I am now 100% more effective being sat quietly on my own at home.
Wow.
And I think that came through COVID. So that was that period for me when we all disappeared off home and we started working from home. And I found that I was getting twice as much work done, 3 times as much work done as being sat in the office. And I did go back in the office a number of times throughout COVID, and then following that as well. And whenever I was in, it became more and more difficult to work because others were talking in that space. So what I ended up doing was I found that if I wanted to work, I went home. And if I wanted to kind of collaborate, I went into the office. Yeah. So actually, the office no longer became a place of work for me. It was a place of collaboration and generation of ideas and that type of thing. And I wanted to ask whether you think that our office buildings will need to change as the use of them changes, or as more people kind of work from home and get comfortable doing that. I don't know. What's your take on places of work?
Well, we're looking to refurb ours. And we've had ours for about 6 or 7 years now, and it's got a couple of offices, and then it's open space. And I think what we're looking at is to have like a media room, for example. So if you're doing your podcasts and you're having conversations, etc., which we're doing a lot more of, I think that there's probably a bit of a vibe going on to have those sort of media rooms. Those breakout areas are still important, but also those quiet zones. Because you're right, sometimes offices can be really noisy and people can't get work done. So when we look to design our office, we've got these like sort of quiet areas or individual pods that people can go in and have private conversations with clients or candidates. So I think there's got to be like a multi-use environment rather than just, back in the open plan. There's no offices, everyone's together. I think that's changed. And we're looking to invest in certain areas within the floor plan that we've got, just to create that right feeling. It's a place of work, but you can collaborate, you can break out, you can have your private areas as well. I refuse to have sleep pods, which you wouldn't believe what people ask for.
Really?
Yeah, sleep pods I'm not having. Somebody said, can we get an office dog? I'm like, well, who's going to look after it? These are the things, as I said, the balance of power is now with the employees. But I think it's still got to be a place of work. But I think, and the lighting as well, because sometimes the lighting can be quite dull. So I think they're going to be multi-purpose, etc. But we are seeing a lot of offices trimmed down because they don't need the space, so that they can invest more in what it looks like. Because if you're working hybrid, you don't need 3, 4, 5,000 square foot if you're working on sort of a rota system. So it creates more opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. What about ping pong tables?
No, none of those. I just find it that a lot of companies that I know of that have these ping pong, football tables, etc., even the sort of beer fridge, it's frowned upon if you use it.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like, oh, you're not being productive, and it's like, well, it's just, well, why are you doing it then? So, no, we do play ping pong. So Ed, who you've met, he sets one up basically on the boardroom. But I think there is sometimes it's for show.
Okay.
And do people actually genuinely want or need that? I question that. I think what people want, employees want, is an environment where they feel safe, supported, secure, that they can raise any queries, and they're working with good people. I think having that, I'm not sure, is the make or break. That, and I'm quite tight as well, so I'm not going to pay for it.
Not going to run to the cost of a ping pong table.
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah, take the latter answer. I'm just tight.
I hope you're enjoying the show, and I'd just like to take 30 seconds of your time to tell you about today's sponsor, which is Owen James Events. Owen James Events are a market-leading events and research company, acting as the gateway to innovation in financial services and driving to create positive change in our industry. Now, I've been to a lot of events, and I can honestly say that the Owen James events continue to be the best on the calendar. The events themselves are run well, they're in great locations, and there are some amazing guest speakers. But the participants and the debates that take place, all in the Chatham House rules, are the real gold dust. This November, Owen James are bringing together the brightest minds in private banking and wealth management to tackle the problem of intergenerational wealth transfer. Join Owen James on the 16th of November for a meeting of minds, wealth management and private banking, an event that will bring together the CIOs and CEOs of the private banks and larger wealth management firms. Don't miss your chance to be part of this transformative event and network with the brightest minds in our industry. To book your space, go to owenjames.com. It's free to attend, and I guarantee you'll come out of every event with some new ideas to make you and your business more effective. Okay, let's get back to the show.
With regards to the consolidators, there's still appetite to buy quality firms, I think. I think there's been a bit of an adjustment in terms of attitude of price. So I think a little bit less money is a wash now. They'll still pay for a good business, but perhaps not paying what they once did.
It did get to crazy levels, didn't it? At one
Are you
point.
seeing that as well?
I think prices are still, in my view, prices are still good, but they're not crazy anymore.
Yeah.
There was a time where you think, really, for that amount? But I think they're becoming more picky now, in my experience anyway. Like you said, there's still money out there. They still want to buy businesses, but they're now a bit more choosy. And I think what my own personal viewpoint, and I'd be interested in yours on this one, is that you kind of, in the early days, like 2-3 years ago, the market was flooded with PE money, wasn't it? It was just some capital came in from the States, and it was like, right, buy everything. Buy whatever you can get your hands on. Let's just do it. And then all of these consolidators have now got their regional hubs sorted out. So they've got a place in Edinburgh, they've got one in Leeds, they've got one in London. So now that rush, the gold rush has gone, and now those hubs have been achieved. It's kind of we'll bolt firms into those hubs, and because there's no land grab. You can be more picky on, and there's no rush really to kind of choose firms to put in there. It is my view from the outside, but I'd be intrigued on your view.
I think that's right. I think that's broadly right, and I can see that. I think there are some pressures building up with the consolidators to make money. Where's the return? Because you're right, there was a big land grab at the start, and I think there is pressure now coming down saying, well, hang on a minute, so where are the returns? And obviously, when the gravy train started, it was a different economic cycle to what we're in now. So what we're seeing is consolidators saying, well, where's my pound of flesh now? Where's the return? So there's pressures now being put on to the advice firms to say, well, actually, we were projecting this, we're now at this. So whilst I agree, I can also see that consolidators are being picky, but they're saying, hang on a minute, we need to start making some money now, and perhaps they overpaid for a few firms at the very beginning, which, and if they're not performing now, is an issue. And they've lost a number of good people because they've gone through the earn-out period.
True.
So that's happened as well. So yeah, I think that consolidation piece is still a buoyant market, but there are certain pressures now. And these PE boys, it's a 2 or 3 year cycle. They're in and they're out.
And we're probably 2-3 years into that cycle, right?
This is it, yeah. So
where's the next opportunity coming from?
Yeah, which I always find interesting. So once the 2-3 year cycle's gone, who else is then going to buy? I always think, what happens next?
It's a good question, that, isn't it? Do you just keep consolidating into the bigger PE houses, or they must get to a point suddenly where it's like, well, that market's gone, on to the next market.
Yeah.
And then what happens? Fascinating.
Yeah, because I speak to a number of consolidators, and I try and get an understanding. If I'm looking at it and thinking, right, I've got a 2 or 3 year cycle, I'm coming to the end of it, we need to sell. Who's then going to buy that?
Yeah.
Because if you look at the industry, there's still a lack of new people coming into it, so it's just withering.
Yeah.
But honestly, there is money to be made at the moment, so maybe that's a problem for 4 or 5 years down the line.
Yeah.
But there is still a huge demand for advice and good quality advice. So I don't think there's I think it's a great time to be an advisor. I really do.
Well, I suppose at the moment you can kind of set your own price, really, can't you? You can. There's so much demand for advice and so few advisors that really there's no competition in the marketplace. I don't think.
No, I think it's a shrinking pool. Advice firms are still looking for good people, etc. But I think in times of crisis, people need advice and they will pay. So I think it's a great time, and the industry now is different to 2006. It's so more professional, which is great to see, and I think they really do add value to clients. The only thing I would say to advisors is they need to market this. They need to market their services, because running a business, I get inundated with people who are trying to sell to me, and that's from other professional services. Very rarely do I get anybody from the advice sector, and that to me is like, why is that? Because I find that interesting. So I think there is huge opportunity, but I do think advisors need to start thinking about their business development tools and how they attract and how they retain clients, because I think there is opportunity out there. And think about your marketing plan, think about your sales plan, because there are clients out there who need advice. Definitely.
I always find fascinating that I do a lot of work with the survey platform Vouch4, and the results from Vouch4 suggest that on average about 80% of clients don't think they've been asked by their advisor to recommend them to somebody else.
Wow, 8 out of 10, eh?
Now when you ask advisors, they say they've asked every client to recommend them, but somewhere that's been lost in translation somewhere. These clients are walking out not thinking that that's been asked of them. So I wonder how direct that is as a request from the advisor to say, please recommend me to somebody who you think will benefit from my services as you have, or how much of it, and if you wouldn't mind recommending me, and then they disappear off. It's the end of a sentence somewhere. I don't know.
Do you think there's a bit of a fear factor around selling because of the way that the FCA has perhaps, in a way, demonised, or some advisors demonise selling, because there is opportunity out there, and I think when you're promoting your service, etc., it's like you've got a great opportunity, but it's like people meet me and they never ask about my business, about my pension, and like, why? One of the things people say is there's a lot of earnings in recruitment. No, there is.
Yes, there
is. I'm talking to you. You're not saying anything to me, so why not? And it's almost like, is there a fear factor because they don't want to offend me, or they feel it's been beaten out of them because of the regulators saying that's naughty, you shouldn't be selling? I don't know what the answer is.
But we were having a chat before we started recording this podcast, and I was telling you about a story where I talked to a couple of advisors from a large national firm, and both of those advisors within the space of 1 hour asked for my personal business 3 times.
Wow.
No other advisors ever asked for my personal business. And they were both from the same national firm, and they both did it 3 times in the space of an hour. Very nice, and it would have been incredibly easy to say, yeah, okay. They phrased it great, but that I'm assuming that is training that comes from that firm that others don't have. Fascinating.
So maybe there's a training and learning sort of development gap there then.
Could well be. I'm conscious that I want to get onto some stuff around what employers can do to try and attract the right candidates, because I'm sat with the man who knows all about this type of thing. So if I'm an employer and financial advisory firm, small or large, whatever it is, how can I attract the best talent into my business?
Well, obviously use a recruitment firm, but let's assume they're not going to do that for whatever reason. But I think, in jest, but being serious, I think if you do work with a recruiter, choose somebody who really knows the market, because they will be networking and speaking to those individuals, etc., every single day, probably 7 days a week. So I jest a little bit, but using a recruitment firm does have very significant benefits. I think the one thing I would do is, and I see this a lot, is you make sure there is an opportunity to fill. So there's a real role.
Okay.
Because I've had a number of meetings with clients when you start doing the fact find process of why you're looking, and it's normally to do with growth. Okay, what does growth look like? Why are you growing? And the conversation starts to fall down because they don't really know. It's almost like they have a budget need, but they don't know why or the reasons behind it. And I think you then get into a conversation, what are you looking for? Well, it then becomes like a pizza with 6 different toppings. You know, we would like this, or maybe they can have business development, or maybe they can do some mentoring. And you think, well, how are you going to sell this opportunity when it's all things to all men? So I think the first thing to do is really understand what the opportunity is. So, for example, what I would do is, and I'm doing this at the moment, I think there's a role needed in my business. And I'm now going through and developing a role profile. And that will look at a list of duties, okay, of what that person should be doing in my own mind. And also then looking at the metrics in terms of how do I know if they're being good at the job. So what does good look like? And I will do that, and I will then vet it myself to say, is this a role? And if it is a role, we move forward. But I think the first thing people should be doing is understand what the role is and then do a role profile. Okay, so that's the first thing, because I think many people don't. But they want an advisor because they want an advisor, but don't know quite why or what the role is. So that's the first thing I'll be doing. The second thing I would be doing is, if you're going to advertise this role, do not just then copy and paste your role profile and put it on there, because it's just noise. No one's going to see it. If you're going to do a job advert, be creative, okay? And you can do that now using ChatGPT. That's a great sort of content. You know, it's almost like having your own content writer, a copywriter, and explain what your business is, what it does, and what it means for the person joining, etc. And I would always use the power of 3. So go with 3 questions at the top of the advert. So, are you looking for financial freedom? You're looking for the best clients, etc. Work in the most amazing office, whatever it is. Start with that so you get some reader interest. So I would say, firstly, get your profile. Make sure your job advert is clear, and that can go on LinkedIn, because a lot of advisors on LinkedIn, and it's, you know, you could do a personal post. And I think those are probably the main ways, etc. And when you're networking with people, always say, you know, are you looking for opportunities? Keep us in mind, etc. Network. Don't forget the power of networking as well. But it is very difficult, because very few firms can have their own USPs, because you're an advice firm. So it is hard. But just make sure you've got those key principles, and you've got to have transparency about earnings and bonuses, and explain what your company is, your why, so people start to believe in it, and you bring them with you, rather than we're looking for an advisor to bring their client bank, and we've got some technology to help you. You and what? Thousands others. Okay, you need to do more than that. Okay, so it is a very, very competitive market, but you also need to not overpay as well, which is strange coming from a recruiter, but you've got to look at your costs as well, because we're living in inflated times, and you know the market is moving at such pace at the moment in terms of inflationary pay rises. Just keep it real, because ultimately you're just going to pass that cost on to your clients anyway.
Interesting. That's a good point on cost, actually. I read a book not too long ago called No Rules Rules,
okay,
which is the story of Netflix and how they moved from a very rule-based business to a business without rules. Fascinating read for anyone that wants to think about how they run their company. But the ethos generally is that you, over time, remove more and more of the rules, because all rules do is get in the way, and they stop good people doing great things. Yeah. So their ethos was hire the best people in the world, pay them more than anybody else possibly could, and let them get on with it.
Really?
Very interesting
Scary.
book. No
Yeah.
rules. I think the bigger your organisation, the more challenging that is, but apparently they still run by those principles now. The only rule at Netflix says do what's good for Netflix.
Well, they're making the profit, aren't they?
They're doing all right off the back of it, aren't they?
Yeah, they're doing all right, yeah.
So we've talked about how to get the best people in. The market, it really is, I suppose, in turmoil at the moment. Not in turmoil, that's probably the wrong word. The market is seeing a high amount of turnover, I think, of staff at the moment. People are looking to kind of move around. How do you keep staff members once you've got them?
I think this goes back to basics, where you need to be having regular reviews with people. Traditionally, the one-to-ones, the appraisals, the half-year appraisals, I think they are still very important. And it doesn't even have to be as structured with that formality. I would say take your people out. Just take them out for a coffee. How are you getting on? How are you finding things? Because if you keep asking those questions, you shouldn't have the surprises. You'll always get the odd one that comes out of the blue. But I think whilst we live in this age of hybrid working, etc., it does make it more difficult. So make time to sit with people and have those conversations about them, because that's the best way to retain people, because you're having those conversations about them and how they're finding it. And that's so important these days, because there's lots of that people that talk about quiet quitting, that they become sort of like quite resigned in their job and then just sort of and then they're afraid to have those conversations. Well, I'm not sure if I'm 100% on that, and certainly the advisor demographic's a bit older anyway. But I think old-fashioned, it's not even old-fashioned, good advice, talk to people. Because as an advisor, you're talking to your clients and you're always asking what's going on. Use some of those skills and traits that you have and talk to your people, because that's the best way. And you'll get an intuition whether someone's happy or not. So retaining people conversationally, great. And then just make sure you've got that framework to allow people to be good at what their job is. So you need to understand what are their key motivations, what's preventing them from being good to great, etc. So again, it's a layered conversation, but there are things that you can do. But it really just boils down to that one-on-one conversation, in my opinion anyway.
It makes perfect sense to me. That's I think the reason we've evolved as a species is to be able to communicate, and it'll be a shame not to use it to try and better everyone's lives. Yeah. Me again, I'm back to ask for one more favour. If you don't already, please subscribe to the podcast. It always astounds me that most of the people watching or listening to this podcast aren't subscribed. It takes just 2 seconds to click that subscribe button and you'll get content posted directly to you every time it becomes available. What's more, it means a huge amount to the show. The more subscribers we get, the better guests we can bring in, and the better we can make this show for you. So please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Okay, let's get back to the show. Last question around the employment specific side of things. If you're a candidate, how do you get the best job, the best deal?
Okay. I won't use the jibe about using a recruiter. Done that one.
But seriously, register with a headhunter or a recruiter as a candidate?
Yeah, I think, again, because we will have access to knowledge and opportunities that aren't in the market. So again, but as I said before, the power of a good advice is crucial. So if you get a good recruiter, for example BWD, you can have those conversations with people who are knowledgeable in the field of whatever it is, in our core services, and they're good people to know, because that's what we do every single day. Talk to advisory firms, so we know who's good, who's bad, who's been a little bit naughty, where all the dead bodies are. We know this, okay, and you need to build up that trust. But let's assuming that some people don't want to do that. The one thing I would advise is a strong CV. Have a strong CV which is concise, maybe a page and a half. You don't need to do your last 25 years of experience. And I'd make it concise in terms of the key achievements that you've had. Mention your qualifications. Mention what you do in terms of professional development. I think it's really important, because employees want to see what you do over and above. So, for example, if they hold networking events, or whether they're the chair of the PFS, whatever it is, make sure that is clear. And I would also go as far to say, be explicit with your numbers. So if you're talking about your advisory numbers, your fee income, etc., the demographic and the clients that you work with, be specific, because that will, if you do that and other people don't, you'll get looked at, because they'll look at the numbers.
It's often easier to believe a number that finishes in a 1 or a 3 or something rather than a 0, right?
Yeah. Make it real, because on the flip side of that, I would be saying to an employer, make sure you check that the numbers that are given on a P60 or whatever sort of match up to what's being said. But from a candidate perspective, I think that concise CV with your accolades, your professional development, certainly. And I would also, if you know people in the industry, know a managing director or know an advisor, put your feelers out. Ask them, are you looking at the moment? Okay, because you'll get an answer. You know, if you're comfortable in doing that, do that. A well-scripted, personal sort of note to a business owner, that goes a long way. I'm probably doing myself out of business here, but
but it's great advice.
It works.
Yeah,
it works.
In my experience, knowing the right people is as invaluable as having a great CV or anything else, really. It's having those conversations. It comes back to having conversations and personal connections.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a beautiful segue into how I'd like to close down our podcast today, which, as our regular listeners will know, is our quick-fire question round.
All right, okay.
This is a chance for our guests to know a bit more about you as an individual, James. So are you ready for some quick-fire questions?
I'm going to do my best, yeah.
Okay. What motivates you?
What motivates me is the opportunity to build the best business that I can and help people achieve their ambitions, whether that's the people I work with, clients or candidates. That is my why, and I've been very clear with everybody that I work with. That gets me up in the morning.
And what do you like to do on a weekend?
You'll see me in the gym a lot.
I mean, to be fair, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can do. Healthy diet. But I think you'll also see me walking my dog, listening to a podcast, and that's how I get the downtime.
Obviously, the Effective Advisor podcast is number one. Yes.
Number one, yeah. Second to us, yeah.
What's something that you've always wanted to do but haven't yet had the chance to?
I think there's a couple of things. Triathlon, I'd like to do that. But I'd like to learn to swim properly because my daughter's a swimmer.
Okay.
Swims at a very high level. And they're just so graceful, you know, and I'm terrible. I'm like I'm drowning. So I'd like to do that. And that would just complement my sort of health and fitness stuff that I do anyway.
To be fair, that's on my bucket list. Maybe we should do one together.
Yeah, we should do, yeah.
Oh,
well, the triathlon.
The triathlon, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Never done one.
Let's do a mini one first.
Yeah, the tiny one, sprint one, yeah.
The baby one.
Yeah. What's something you've changed your mind about in the last year?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say whether I've changed my mind or probably just had it broadened, I think the impact of AI, I think that's going to be huge. And I'm not sure we know what we're doing. And I'm a great believer in technology being an enabler, but I'm also fearful about the ramifications that is now out of Pandora's box, because I think it's scary and it's growing at such a fast rate. So I thought about it. I thought, okay, it's fine. It's like an internet search thing. It's like Google, great. No, I think this is fundamentally going to change how we work, and how that's going to end up. I have no idea.
Don't think anyone does. That's the problem, right?
No. Ask AI, it'll know.
Well, ask ChatGPT.
Yeah,
How will this end? Funnily enough, I did interview ChatGPT for a podcast.
Oh, did you?
Fascinating answers, yes.
Were they sort of genuine answers?
Yeah. You can listen to it on the history. I asked it a range of questions. I told it that it was going to be the guest on my show, what the show was, and then asked it the questions, and I just took the answers and turned them into a text-to-speech tool to give it a voice. So I did an episode with ChatGPT, and it didn't want to take over the world. It just wanted to make our lives easier.
Do you know you can get it to pretend?
Can you? Okay.
If you get it to pretend to be an advisor.
Okay. I'll have a go with that.
Yeah, I've done that. And I think that is, it has to go out of its parameters. But if you get it to believe it's like a superhero, like a super advisor,
wow,
it will give you advice in terms of what you should be doing from an investment perspective. It's crazy.
I will have a look at that. That'll be very interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, I threw you there.
That's fine. Only 2 to go. What's the greatest life lesson that you've learned?
Run your own race. Run your own race. So many people project, their own image in terms of they run a multi-billion-pound business, etc. They showcase only the finest things. I think what I've learned is, you run your own race, and wherever you get to is going to be fine. But don't worry too much.
And lastly, what advice would you give to your 10-year-old self?
Do you know what? Nothing. I wouldn't because I think whatever I've experienced has been through a reason, the universe, etc. And it's made me a better person. And I wouldn't want somebody to tell me to do this or not do that, etc. I've experienced for a reason, and I think it's helped shape who I am today. So, apart from maybe saying, bet on Leicester to win the Premier League, maybe a bit of a subtle one, but other than that, no, I would just allow me just to enjoy the life and the challenges that happen.
That is a great way of looking at things. Thank you ever so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will find it fascinating, not just around the market itself, but also the great specific advice that you gave. And if people do want to get in touch with you, they can find you at
BWD-Search.co.uk. That's the website. People can see me on LinkedIn, etc. But yeah, my numbers are all over the LinkedIn and website. So yeah, just give me a call or drop me a line.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much, James.
Thank you, Ben. Cheers.